Hello everybody and welcome to today's webinar. It's so great to have you all here. I know we're going to have a great conversation now about, well, all the things that are going on in the events world and how to adjust and move forward in it. We are joined today by a number of great speakers. First of all, I'm going to ask up to the stage Mukta. But before I do, I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. I'm Claire Forestier. I'm an independent host. I'm moderating today's conversation. And obviously, as a host who works in events, this subject is very close to my heart, how technology is going to improve engagement and how we are all going to move forward in the new normal. So we're going to be using the tech Muni today. I hope you've all logged on and understood that. But to get a little bit more of understanding about it, because I've only just started practicing with it myself, I'm going to get the expert up here, and that is Mukta Mohammed, who's hopefully going to join us now. Are you there, Mukta?
Hi there, everybody. Thank you guys also for coming up. Thank you, Claire, for that introduction. First of all, I just want to extend my thanks and gratitude to all the panelists and everybody that's attending today. So yeah, I'll just tell you a little bit about what Nuni is. Nuni essentially is an audience engagement platform and a community platform as well. We work with social first organizations. And so the main thing that we do in virtual events and hybrid and live is we help with the Q&A section, the Q&A side and garnering and hosting and nurturing the conversations that are starting inside these events. And so that's what we hope to do today as well, because it's an important conversation that we all have in here in the events industry. And we want to use the Q&As and we want to store the questions that everybody asks on the platform. And so later on, once it's over, we're able to look back at the questions that were asked and create resources from them and updates on the platform. So if you want to be kept in the loop, please log on backstage.nuni.io.
So how's everybody going to do it today? What do we do? When we say Q&A, we would normally in a Zoom call just be using the Q&A at the bottom. Today we're going to use Nuni to go in and write our questions. And I think a few people have already picked up the tech already and done that. So when people go in, they can see there are some questions there already. Then we just carry on as normal, really, as we would do, but just using the Nuni platform so that we can all kind of keep in touch afterwards. It doesn't go away when we turn the Zoom call off, does it?
Exactly, yeah. So it's all there. So the whole point of it is to have the pre-event questions, the during the event and post-event. And so it sort of creates a holistic look at the engagement. And so instead of putting in the questions into Zoom and then losing it afterwards, we want to keep them all on live and log them all on Nuni so we can go back to them and address them all once the event is over, if we couldn't get to all of them.
Oh, okay. Now I know you're going to be backstage during this time, kind of keeping an eye on it all and giving us the information as people ask questions and pointing out when we need to be looking at it, because obviously that's something I'm learning as a host, because I'm not used to looking at the Nuni, but I can see how it's a really valuable way of doing it. And you can see if someone else has already asked your question, you can go up and tick on it so it kind of upsells it. So we can immediately look at it and go, oh, this many people are interested in this. This is a good question to ask. What about, we're recording it as well, aren't we, the webinar? So that will also be able to be found backstage on Nuni as well. So we can keep referring to it and you can send it to anyone who didn't come. So if there's any questions about Nuni from anybody that you want to ask that are a bit broader than this event, I think all Mukta's information is on the Nuni platform, so you can go in there and ask him a question or let us know via chat. If you want to speak to him, you can do the chat on the webinar as normal here and he can get back to you afterwards. And of course people do network with each other wherever, but the question's very key on Nuni. And then we will, I suppose in a moment, get around to introducing our new panel, unless there's anything else you need to add at this point.
No, so it's just thank you guys all for coming. If you have any questions, of course, use Nuni. I've put in the link. If everybody clicks the chat, you'll see the link there. If you haven't come through there already, so you can post the questions on there. And then as the conversation develops, we'll go over to Nuni and we'll take a look at the questions that people have posted.
So that's backstage.nuni.io.
Yes, there we go.
If you haven't got there already. Okay, well, what we're going to do now is introduce the panel. First of all, we're going to be meeting Siddhi Trivedi. Siddhi wears several hats, actually. She runs her own consultancy company. She's founding a technology platform, but it's her role in running physical events and her experience with TEDx Leicester that makes her today an ideal guest for this. Can I ask you quickly, Sidi, tell me about an event you've been involved in or you've organised?
Oh, first of all, hello, and thank you to Mukta for organising this incredibly interesting and valuable webinar. And thanks to Claire for hosting. So number one, our last live event took place December 2019, quite a long time ago. And we had got a plan to host an event in April, which we obviously postponed. And we're looking at potentially having a virtual event now. TED has made a decision that all their events are now going to be hosted virtually. So we are moving towards that model, moving into a virtual environment, being able to still keep our audience engaged is really important. So, and also not only have I've also organised a few virtual events and spoken at a few, one major conference that used a conference app too. And I think that's something that we can talk about later, what the experiences are and what we've learnt from that. Because I think we have to, well, we're in Leicester now and we're observing lockdown again. So I think we're going to have to brace ourselves to prepare for more virtual events. And hopefully through this event, we can talk through how to make these more personalised.
Lovely. Thank you, Sidi. I'm sorry you're in lockdown again, but clearly a good conversation today. And you're right in the heart of the storm, really, with the TED events and all. You know, I feel for you with lockdown starting again for you almost. Okay, thank you.
No, we're not starting again. I think the main point is, yeah, no, it wasn't starting again. I think we're just reinventing ourselves. That's
okay.
all.
Fair enough. That's a good way to look at it. Okay, so our next panelist is Franco Delacroix-Verbois, which is a real name because he is French, so he's allowed to have a name like that. He's the founder of the Event Organisers Network, and he's a very experienced event organizer and consultant. He's always full of ideas. He's got an amazing vision for the future of virtual events. He's a always very enthusiastic person to work with in events. So Franco, tell me about one of your successful events.
Were you talking about me just then?
Yeah. You're not feeling energetic today.
Oh, yeah. No, it's fine. It's great. Nice to be here. Thank you, Mukta, for inviting us, and nice to meet the other panelists as well. Yeah, do you know what? Things happen and you have to progress. And I'm really, really lucky that from the outset, I just embarked on this quite literally and just went, my business is all about bringing people together face to face, networking events and all that stuff. So that's what I live by, and I love it. And suddenly I'm not allowed to hug people anymore. I'm not allowed to bring people together. I can't do that. But early on I decided, right, okay, I'm just going to get out of my comfort zone, jump into the virtual space, accelerate plans that I wanted to do. And that's what I did. And so I've put a few events on over the last 3 months. I've probably got about 1,500 people together now at various events. And that's worked really well. We'll talk about, various bits, but one example was for a farmers group in the UK, and they normally get together on a Zoom or on some sort of physical event. And we did an event for them and they loved it. They just engaged, more people could attend. There was really, really good engagement and it was good fun. You can't hug people, but the people, you get quite close to them. That's great. And there's other stuff I could talk about, but we can cover that later maybe.
Okay, thanks, Franco. Yeah, you have been very busy in the digital space, making meetings happen and still doing your introductions, which is brilliant. And it's finding a way forward, isn't it? I think you've done that really well. So our next guest is Rainer Seider, who is the Deputy Head of Energy, Digitalization and Innovation for the City of Berlin. So totally different. He's got lots of experience in events, but he is now having to turn his hand to hybrid. He's got a really big event coming up quite soon, as he's going to tell us about now. Hi, Rainer.
Hi, hello.
Hi there. Tell us about this. You know, you're literally embracing hybrid in a big way very soon.
Yeah, so we have a kind of a summit connecting Berlin startup ecosystem to Asia, and the idea is to we had to do it. We wanted to do it in June, and of course of Corona we had to postpone it. But we are still struggling for having a hybrid event, so not really giving up to the online to the virtual world, but maintaining the possibility of people to physical meet each other, because as Franco explained before, I think this physical meeting is still very impossible to build trust, to get some information. It's fine to meet people on a very superficial way, also online is fine, but I have the impression that you need the offline element as well, so the physical meeting. So our idea is to make as much possible in the physical way and add everything what is not possible online. And in order to create an event that will, as a model, can also sustain for future times, so that we always have in the future online and offline elements, physical meetings, and a broader visibility via streaming worldwide. And for an event that's dealing with Asia from Berlin, of course, it's useful to reach people in Asia online, not just having them flown in, but the audience may be much broader if you can reach the people who are in India, in China, in the Philippines, wherever they live. And so I think that should be, so everything what we are trying now for September should be a model, a role model for the future as well, so for the post-Corona time. So I don't want to make a Corona summit, a virtual summit, but I want to make something that is sustainable, that can survive also in the future and combine the best of the two worlds.
I think there's going to be a lot of people looking at what you're doing to learn from it. And of course, the time zone is going to be really interesting for you, isn't it? You've got to manage that.
Yes, that's of course a problem. So we will have most of online elements in the morning in Berlin. But for instance, for India, there's only 3.5 hours difference. Okay. So it's not so big. And so it's, of course, it's progressing. So up to 6-7 hours. And so we will see how we manage that. But in theory, of course, you can make offline activities, then go online in European night, activities in Asia, and being joined by activities in Berlin the next morning. So you could make a 24 hours work on a project. Right. Probably we won't reach that, but in theory, you can even make from the time difference a profit for the event.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, because it's a big challenge you've got there. Brilliant. Well, I think it's good now if we get on with the meat of the conversation. I'm looking actually at Uni now. So just want to remind everybody, any questions, please do stick them on Uni. And maybe it might be a good idea to go straight there now, if that's okay, Mukta, because I know you're going to share your screen and we could look at the first question. So well behaved, it's great having someone else sharing the screen.
The wonders of technology.
Oh, I'm going to need my glasses for this one.
Yeah, same here. I've got like leaning forward.
So here we are. So this is a question that looks like everybody wants to know about: how can we make virtual events all inclusive, especially for non-technical and technically ignorant attendees? And that is true, because as we know, a lot of these platforms, it might be the first time somebody's on it, and how do we help them? So I might come to you with that, Franco, because I know you've been running these events where you know it's a brand new platform and everybody's coming and you've got to do a bit of education. I
think that's a great question, and I think it covers a lot of people. I am not a technical person, and one of the notes that I'm kind of making notes just to share knowledge, but when you're picking an event, when you're creating an event, you have to pick a venue. And the venue needs to suit your event. It's as simple as that. And there's no difference with that when you're planning a virtual event. You have to find the right platform. So if you want an event that's really accessible, really easy, you have to see what the objectives are. What do you want to do with your event? What's the objective? How will people interact? Zoom now, people are getting quite used to Zoom. I've been using Zoom for maybe 3 years now. So I'm used to it, but it gets a bit of used to, getting used to it at the start. So I think use platforms that your audience are familiar with. If you need to do something more technical, then rehearsal is important and letting your people know what they to expect, how to do it. to have a help desk like you would at a conference. So you can create a virtual help desk, you can do those things. And for me, I think those are the main ones. You know, it doesn't have to be complicated. The event needs to have very clear objectives, and then the trick of a great event is to be able to deliver that in a simple, seamless, smooth way for your audience. And sometimes you need to train your audience a little about it. And they get, you know, you have to push. We've all come out of our comfort zone. And I think that people are quite forgiving as well. I mean, Claire, we worked on an event maybe 6 months ago, 2 months ago at the start, and we had some hiccups and everything. But people understand that, you know, these things happen. In a physical event, you can address them, you can go to a person, you can sort problems out, challenges, etc. When it's virtual and kind of out of your control, that's not so easy. So rehearsal is an important part of that, and educating your audience and helping them to get, you know, the objectives of your event.
Well, that's a conversation for another day, isn't it? Because actually, sometimes at an event, you can hide, at a real life event, you can hide a lot of the problems and recover from them quite quickly. The problem with the technical events, well, quite, and just, you know, get the wine served quicker or whatever it is. Whereas at a virtual event, if the tech goes, then everybody can see it. You're quite exposed. CD, how are you going to work around this one? Because obviously, as you said, TED is going to have to be virtual for a while now. How do you make it inclusive for everyone? Oh, Mukta's gone screen sharing again.
So okay. I've just looked at one of the questions about how to, you know, what will this mean for the venues? So one of the things that we want to make sure, and we've always done, is all our TEDx Leicester events have been inclusive. So if we are to host a virtual event, we do need to take into account everything from, you know, partially sighted to making sure that they have accessibility to tech, even the non-tech. So we will be, I think what Franco has mentioned, I think is really important, that we need to find technology that people are used to and comfortable with. And if not, then we will probably create a video, just a demo, so that people can actually be able to get familiar with it. And the most important thing, I think we already discussed this before, about making sure that when we, if we host hybrid venues, like Rainer said, we need to find a venue that actually builds in the technological capabilities for our event. Because in Leicester, we haven't found that yet. So we are looking to find that. We want to keep partners and we want to keep our venues going, because that's one of the key components of TEDx Leicester. We are building a community and we want everybody in our community to feel part of this. And our venues have always been really important to us. So we will try our best to try and see if we can actually, you know, invest in the local community, find venues, and, you know, we can always reach out to Franco and Rainer for advice.
Yeah.
It's interesting what you say there, because the venues, you know, it's a bit of a kick up the backside for the venues. If they want to exist and survive in this space, they have to be giving you everything you're going to need. And I know that a lot of times at venues, it's like, oh, you've got to pay extra for the connectivity and all the rest of it. I think it's going to have to be basic hygiene for venues to give you what you're going to need. And if you could even host your virtual events from a venue. Everybody else is digital, so they need to be giving you all that connectivity. I wonder what you guys are doing, Rainer, with that.
Because so we started with kind of studio events. So having a kind of a small room where you have only a moderator and a real person, and then the real person is changing from one part of the meeting to another. So you have a real live event with people and a professional camera setting, and you don't need to make out of a venue a studio. You just bring everything in. So every venue, every venue is also a possible venue for a hybrid event. So that's really no technical problem. You need one equipment. So you need, so for instance, we have 4 cameras, but 1 camera man, so 3 or fixed cameras or with different angles, and you just switch from one to another. Then you have a video of a person who is not present in the room, but maybe in Asia. So in fact, you can then you need a person who is moderating offline and one is online moderating, and more or less that's it. So you need 4 people, and the technique, which is really no magic. It's not complicated at all. And then you can be in your living room. Or you can be in a real room, and in a hall. So for instance, we are thinking about a hall where you normally can host 130 people, and then there will be 50 present in a hybrid event, because you have only you have the distance of 1.5 meter between the people. Right. So you have more or less a third or a quarter of the people which are going into the room. So you can need every room. You just have to reduce the number of participants live, and you need a bit of technique which you add. So of course but it's not a miracle. So it's quite easy to transform an offline venue into an online venue or a hybrid venue. You have a stage, you can use the stage, you can have a panel on the stage, you only have to keep the distance between the panelists, so you can everything, and then you have maybe a video screen added where you have a person which is not physically present, and so then you have 3 panelists on stage, a moderator, and 1 person on video. So that's the idea we have for our summit as well.
You need to have the space though, don't they? The venues do have to be able to make all this possible. I mean, that's the key thing, isn't it, Franco? So shall we go back and see what other questions are coming up there?
I've got a little bit
make a point. Of course.
Sorry, and a part of that question was also inclusivity, and that's an important part for people to realize, is that actually hybrid and virtual events are hugely inclusive. Like we were discussing, that someone that would not normally either afford to go there or can't travel, there's environmental impact, or maybe mental health issues means that they don't like to go to an event where it's full of people in your face and everything. They're now suddenly able to access these events really, really easily. And they're on screen, and they can be, a lot of people have mobile phones. A lot of the technology now is totally compatible with your mobiles across all formats. So that tends to be a big thing. Going to the TED example, so I've worked with TEDx Bristol here for events for 2,500, 3,000 people, and one thing that we did to make it inclusive is we got businesses to sponsor tickets for people to attend. So businesses would go, there you go, there's an amount of money to allow those people to attend. But now we can do even better. We can get those businesses to invest and sponsor the community or the CSR aspect of the event, and bring the event to the people, and that's really a huge opportunity that this offers now. And I love the Rhinos, the hybrid thing. I think it's completely the way to go, and will enable the events industry especially to come out of lockdown, improving that it can do it, and do it in a safe way, socially distant way, in an augmented way, and that coming out of this, we will have events that are even better, reaching more people with clearer, better content, intelligence and data and all these things. So inclusivity is a huge part of it, and the reach of it is just fantastic.
I think so too. For instance, for our events, even a person in a rural area in India may join our events with a smartphone. And especially in Asia, people are very playful. They're very used to technology and to smartphones and everything. So it's for them, it's much easier to have access to our events than it is with a traveling ticket to Berlin, of course. So there's a technical issue, but especially for Asia, it's less important than in Germany.
Yeah, they're way more tech savvy, aren't they? And less risk averse with their technology. That's an interesting point. I think as well, you know, that whole bit, you know, and inclusivity goes all the way through, people captioning the videos live, all those kind of things can make it so much more inclusive for everybody to be watching. So we've gone back to the questions now, and I noticed that Mukta's been flicking backwards and forwards because he's looking at the ones that has the most questions. Or the most kind of upticks, the ones that are pulling the most interest in. So here's one: what's the best way to build an online community around your event? You know, how do you do that? Because that's what keeps it going. Beforehand, it gets the excitement around the event. Afterwards, more things happen. So many things, have great conversations. Like today, we can have great conversations about events, but it just sort of, that's the end at the event. How do we keep it going afterwards? Can I come to you, Sidi? Yeah.
So that's really important for us when we are hosting any face-to-face or virtual event anyway. And the main thing is, as I think both Rainer and Franco have said, is, you know, take away the fact that you're hosting online. What you want is conversations. And that's what our events are all about, is sparking conversation and building a community. So the first thing you want to do is, like this today, encourage people to ask questions. Unlike a TEDx conference, we're not able to talk online during our conferences. So this is perfect for us because we can really get our community talking to each other using platforms like Mukta's, because one, you can talk amongst each other. Two, if you've got questions, you can see them. The speakers can answer them, maybe privately or, you know, like this. So for me, this is about how you create an online platform to let the community engage both with each other and with the speakers, because I've seen some really great platforms where they have a proper event hosting app where you check in, there's a little reception area, there's a lounge, there's a coffee area, and you can find someone that you want to have coffee with and chat with them. So it's about building a really good platform. We've always used Numni for our events anyway, because they're really good for afterwards to engage with the speakers. So I think, I'm sure Franco and Rainer have got other things to add to that.
Yeah, definitely. Franco, what do you think about this?
I think that the last few months we've just seen incredible amount of innovation and fast tracking. You know, the events industry, I think, has moved forward 5 years in a space of a few months. So whereas before, for normal in-person events, yes, of course you engage with the audience before. Hello, this is the speaker. Events are still about content and sharing knowledge and engaging with the community. You know, that's what events are all about. Before you maybe you'll get a brochure, you know, there's the seminar, there's the speakers, so a bit of engagement. But now, because we've got the extra layer of technology and all the apps that go with it, there's much greater engagement with the audience before, during, and after. And that does a number of things. Before, people get real traction. Oh, what's happening? Oh, those guys are going. Oh, hang on. And dialogue starts building in the lead up to it. You can blend in all the social media. Of course, that's all measurable, targeted campaigns, so value for sponsors, value for content, enriching content, and all these things. During the event, of course, all the dialogue that's going on about, all the stats, all the polls, all these interactive things like Numni does. And then post-event, evaluation and keeping in touch. Oh, right, you were great. You really engaged in that bit. Listen, we're doing another conference or another event, or, you know, and then people connecting. So there's much more connectivity. And now for events in hybrid and virtual mode, there is a much greater level of engagement, much, much more than there was 6 months ago. Just in this short period, it's incredible.
What are you doing, Rainer? Because obviously you've got the hype coming up to your event now, this really big event. How are you kind of starting the community early?
The important thing is that we, and whether it's virtual or online, it's the same thing. We changed from having only one big event per year to many smaller events. So we have a series of events. So every month we have 2 or 3 smaller events. and which are linked also on with social media activities and newsletters, so that there is a constant level of activities and information, and you can keep the community active through that also. And also with a good website, which we are just starting now. But the main idea is really to have not only one big event, which we have to promote before and making some follow-up afterwards, and many initiatives during the event, and everything's breaking up and down afterwards. But having every month 1 or 2 smaller events, studios where we all reach 100 to 150 people, via social media, you reach another 3,000 people who get at least a notice, an idea of that. And so even the people who don't attend the event, they know that we are going on and that we are building bridges between Asia and Berlin. And so that's the possibility to keep on building this community. And this is really growing, and it's getting more dynamic. But nevertheless, I think for having more real engagement of the people, they should meet on a certain stage physically, because otherwise it's very, you see that on the social media, it's very, you get lots of likes and lots of views and everything, but there is not a true commitment always. So when you know each other already, we have, for instance, we have once a month, we have a call with our Asia Berlin ambassadors that are more or less 23 people all over Asia and Berlin. And, you know, I know them all, so that's fine. I even recognize them by the voice, so I would not need the picture of them. So it's very easy because you know the people, but to get to know people, it's very difficult just to do it online. And that's the reason why I think, although we can do lots of activities online, we need physical activities in between.
I agree, but I like as well, though, that way you said, you know, you're not making it about one big event, you're making it about the whole relationship over the year. And the nice thing then is that everybody can meet up once a week or once a month, whatever, come to those little events. Then you have this wonderful big one. So for real life in-person events going forward, where they're always worried about getting the bums on the seats and are enough people coming and all these kind of things, if you've been engaging them every month, you know, right up until it. And I think a lot of companies will just send out bits of content and stuff, but this is and now everyone's got so used to it. I think it's be a brilliant way to do it. I noticed there's
also very important to personalize the activities to show
Yeah.
real people. So with our ambassadors who are committed who will really get light in the eyes when they're speaking about their activities. So not just having numbers and figures, but to have persons who are responsible and you can touch them online or offline. But at least to give a face to the idea. I think that's also very important, and to build this up too.
The ambassador idea, yeah, that is great. And it's like, I think we were at an event I was at recently, they were talking about when, you know, use the speakers, the people who are going to be keynotes at your events to be ambassadors too, where they are not just, you know, like those of us, we're sort of sharing stuff and saying we're coming on this event, but like almost some of the bigger events, you can give them almost their own page that's attached to the event. So they start bringing in all their community, and it's like, it just builds that excitement. So the community can be little microcosms that suddenly become one big one. Yeah,
exactly,
there's so much opportunity. I'm going to go back, if we may, to the questions. Here we go. Put my glasses on. So old. It's terrifying. So we're looking at what defines a hybrid event is number. Oh no, you've was on a different one here.
Yeah.
Well, mind whichever one. I was going for the top numbers here. What defines a hybrid event, and how feasible are they in generating the same emotive, immersive experience that physical events traditionally have done? Well, we sort of talked about a little bit about that with the community, but what else can you do to bring that emotive connection to essentially this event? And sometimes someone else was also asking, how can you make sure that the virtual attendee isn't the second rate? Oh, you couldn't make it, so we'll shove a little bit on the side for you. How do you make it really inclusive for both parties? I might start with you on that one, Rainer, and then go backwards the other way around.
I think it's if you have a good opportunity, good room, it's quite easy to make a hybrid event as good as a emotive as a physical event, because it is a physical event. So that's not tricky at all. It's just the same setting. You have the people inside. You just have a kind of joining of an online community, and so the most primitive one is just streaming online, so the people can just follow the conference. But of course, then the online audience is only in the second row. They don't have possibilities of participation. And so I think the tricky thing is not to get the same emotion in a physical event, like in a physical event, but to bring the online community into the event and make it happen as well. And if the highest degree of a hybrid event is if it's fruitful for both sides. So if the online community is really adding something to the spirit of the physical community, and vice versa, and probably that's the aim we are aiming for. We won't reach that on the highest degree this year, but that will be the effort to make how to make both parties happy, and including also both elements, and giving fruitful exchange between both worlds, taking the best of both. But that's tricky. So only the physical world is not complicated. Probably the online is a bit more complicated because we don't have so much experience still now. But to the hybrid format, that's the real art where we're aiming for, to make both communities happy and giving inputs from one to the other world.
I'm sneezing away here, having to keep muting myself. I'm suddenly getting a stonking summer cold. Apologies. It's a good thing I muted myself. Yeah, Franco, I mean, we've done those events when we've done networking, for example, great networking online and great networking in person. You would have to, at the virtual event, make the people who, well, the hybrid event, make the people who are networking in person, you'd have to be like pushing them into a booth every now and then and say, network with someone in Asia. Don't just network with who's in the room. You'd have to be doing that kind of networking, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
to make it really inclusive.
I think so. I think we're going back to the question, like, you know, what defines a hybrid event, and you know, how easy is it to do? I've managed it. It means it's not very difficult. Of course, like Rainer said, we're all learning, and to anybody that comes on and goes, hey, I am the king of virtual, you know, there's a lot of stuff out there. And there's one thing also that only dawned on me about a month ago, that a hybrid event is not just a mix of in-person events versus an on-screen event. A hybrid event is a mix of technologies, of mix of setups. So you can have a venue, like Werner was saying, Rainer was saying, in terms of a moderator and a couple of speakers and some entertainment maybe, and just in a physical room. You can have the virtual element with people observing and taking part. And you have the hybridized technology like Nuni that comes in that adds another layer. So it's a mix of technologies to deliver an event, and that's what a real hybrid event is. In terms of bringing the emotion and the physicality of an event together, I was talking to a colleague of mine, and we're working on an event together, and saying, what can we do to bring the physicality of an event more into a virtual space? And what we're doing is we're doing an event for some VIPs, and they are all getting 3 bottles of wine and some cheese and some chocolate, with a personal letter from the MD of this business. We are shipping this to them. They're not allowed to open it until the event. And at the event, all the attendees are opening it together. And then suddenly, not only are you together in this virtual space, in this hybridized with technology and the glissos or the slidos or the Nunis or those special kind of technologies that are out there. So you hybridize it in that sense. We are going to be in a physical venue doing that with the person in the wine tasting and the chocolate tasting and the cheese tasting and the pairing, and people are tasting it, smelling it, and going through that same emotion at the same time. And that for me is just a really nice way to elevate the virtual or hybrid event experience, just like, because we're adding touch, smell, knowledge, sight, experience, not just like slightly passive experience for a virtual event.
interesting, isn't it? You can do all these clever things. So, Sidi, with your events, you're saying they're going to be virtual, but there'll obviously be a sense of you're going to maybe have some people there because you're in Leicester, so you could have a virtual studio with people coming and going, but then you'll have that hybrid side of it as well, or the real life studio, and then the virtual. So that's going to be a hybrid. How are you going to kind of keep it all going? Because it's really important in TED, that audience, isn't it? You want to stand in front of that audience. So how do you help the speakers feel emotionally connected?
Yeah. To be honest, all the things that Franco has mentioned. So what I didn't say was at the weekend, we were all part of TED Live, the Uncharted. So normally that is the flagship TED conference. And this was all virtual. And what we did was, there were breakout sessions in there. So we all had little mini 15 group conversations. We had a topic and we all discussed them and then took them back to the main stage. We also had music and entertainment, and everybody put their cameras on and started dancing together. So it's like 500 people on screen. And the thing about getting your glass of wine and stuff, that that's something that we've been doing with other events where you have cocktail hour and everyone gets a drink and you just drink together. But I think what's been really good in all of this is the conversation. Everything is about networking, is all about exchanging ideas and conversations and getting to know each other. So going back to, I think, this hybrid event, there are opportunities to meet face to face later, but I've been managing, I have a couple of companies where my whole team is virtual, and I've been managing them virtually for years. Some clients I've never met, but I've only met them through the virtual audience, through screens. But what's really, really important is the conversation, that you connect with people. If you can build that personal connection through a conversation and an activity, is, Franco said that, use your 5 senses. I think you can build authentic relationships, but it's what you do after the event, which is what Rainer said. How do you follow it up? The online presence with personal contact. I think there's more opportunities because we've got more online tools to do that. So you can follow it up with a website or a WhatsApp group or Slack. It's about keeping those conversations going to personalize it. And I think for us with the hybrids, we will get a studio. We'll probably live record our speakers. We haven't thought about it really. I mean, this is just, if my team is listening, no, we haven't made the decision. I'm just thinking, but I know that other team members have done live recorded talks in the studio, and then we play them. It doesn't give that buzz to the speaker, but you know what? They're used to that because they've done that through rehearsal with us. So we always do that. The only thing we might do is, we might, film it with, online individuals giving feedback. I don't know. That's a suggestion, but I think Rainer's probably got more suggestions of what he's done, and Franco. We're going to be new at it, but we're going to look and see what others are doing. And most of our TED family and the TEDx tribe have been doing things like that. So, and it's worked.
Yeah.
You're mute.
I'm so polite. It's because I was sneezing so much. I muted myself. I like that. It's true. And there are ways to replicate the audience and ways to hype yourself up to feel there's one there. And I think as our technology improves, we can make it feel really realistic. Let's go back and see what the audience are asking. Oh, blooming on the glasses again. Oh yeah, how do we add variety to these events? I mean, again, that's using some of
exactly.
these virtual spaces are amazing. We've got someone doing it in Bristol who's got all this, it's like being in a TV studio. But is speaker after speaker sat at their desk like we are, like this, in boring studies? How do we live that? It can be a bit repetitive. What are you going to do in Berlin, Rainer, to amp it up, to make it different?
I think that's also one of the great arts we have to work on, because um, actually most virtual events are just copying offline events. So we have a panel like here, and we're not just sitting on one stage with a moderator in between, but our faces are visible on a screen. But in fact, it's like an offline event, and I think the art will be to use the online possibilities to make more activities possible that would not be possible offline at all. So we are not yet there, because even our events are more or less copies of physical events online, but we want to go there. Of course, you can take interactive tools as World Cafes, which you have also offline. You can do that online as well. You can have fishbowl discussions offline, offline and online as well. But it's still a copying of tools which we have developed in an offline world. And also, if you have a chocolate and wine tasting at the same time, it's just copying the senses and the impressions that you have normally offline in a physical event. So what will be I think would be an add-on would be really to have something quite different, and a new event experience which you only can create online, and there we still are not.
Yeah.
So I've seen so many webinars now with bad pictures, bad video quality, unstable internet, and so they were just bad copies of a physical event, and people will get tired very soon of these, and they won't go anymore to these events in the future. And as soon as they can go to physical events, they will go back to physical events if possible. And if you want to make really something more, you have to invent other tools of communication, and also maybe of creation. So the kind of co-creation that is offered by online activities should be also used more in events, like a workshop. And I think that's the way we have, and our creative people, event people, have to develop their tools to offer online tools that are more than a copy of an offline tool or an offline instrument.
I mean, it plays to another question someone's asked, which is how should pricing of hybrid events be in comparison to physical or web? Because a lot of people go, well, they should be free or they should be cheap. And it's like, no, to do them well, you've got to use all this Gucci tech and software. And someone was showing me a mock-up for the plan that they have where everybody's green screened and they can move the square. So instead of these little 4 squares, you can have little heads that pop up on the screen. So when Franco's going to talk, Franco's little head would pop up like this, and then mine would, and, you know, but that costs money. So how do you make it, you know, exciting without blowing your budget, I guess? Franco, what do you do? I know you're, I was saying your little head popping up, but it is tough.
So what I do, I think that picking up on a thing that Werner said, I totally agree that now that we've got this opportunity to kind of reinvent the wheel with the events industry, you know, we actually, the events industry is hugely creative, and lots of people come up with amazing ideas. At the moment, we're still in this phase of adapting. Hang on a minute, we used to do it like this, but now the landscape's changed a bit. So let's do the same, but in this new landscape. We're a bit in that space now. So like, like for me, for example, sometimes I bring on a magician. He does live, virtual magic, and in a really clever way. I was helping with an event over the last couple of days, and the host was feeling a bit flat and a bit tired, and we're like, right, come on, stand up. And you can get the motivators, and someone that stands up on the screen suddenly gives kind of energy and things like that. But we have an opportunity here to really think out of the box, to create augmented experiences. We've got the technology, we can do some amazing stuff. We just haven't discovered it yet. And I think it's exciting to be in that space. It's like, what can we do that would be, just blow people's mind? And in terms of budget, you can do that through collaboration. You can do that with new people. But it's also the relationship you have with your clients. And you're saying, well, you know, oh yeah, can you cut the budget? Okay, so what part of your event do you want to cut out? You know, you know, it's always the same discussions happen where, you know, you can't get to the moon with no budget. So you have to have the right tools to get to where you want. And that comes in the relationship that you have, so that, going back to Werner's original point of building trust and understanding and listening and knowing what your client wants and what makes them tick, all these things, you know, build in the value. And at the end of the day, the price you can charge for your event is what people will pay, and you have to demonstrate the value that people get from it. If people don't understand the value, then they won't pay the price. If you make it clear and just see what the value is, then they will pay the price. Not a problem. But at the moment, you can't apply a rule generally, but virtual events have a perception to be cheaper. But it's also cheaper for the attendees, because there's no travel, there's no accommodation, the ease of it. You can have access to amazing speakers because they can now deliver their talk from home. So there is, you know, pros and cons to this, but there's a lot of pros in making it more affordable. So do you drop the price of an event by 30, 50%, but then you augment the audience by 300%, because you can reach all these people. And so you have to find where that balance is. And so maybe for Werner's event, it's, you know, keep them small, local, but we're reaching these people as well. And other events, we said, you know what, I'm going to charge $10 per attendee, but I've got 10,000 people coming and I can do something amazing. And so this is where people have to find. So again, it's what the objectives is of the event. What does the audience want to learn about, and what value do they see in the service you're providing? Sorry, I just went off on a slight.
No, it's really interesting. And I think it was a bit of an education of audiences they start to need to go to some really bloody good online events, and then they'll start paying for them. Sidi, what do you do here? Because you've got to make it, I know, sexy, exciting, not blow your budget, and as you said, like the TEDx talks are on very small budgets. So what kind of ideas would you come up with, or are you thinking about?
So I think Franco's made a very important point. You know, quality over quantity. So if we're going to host, we need to make sure that the content is of value to our audience and our community. We don't, you know, talking about pricing, hybrid events, I think it's always been the case with TED and TEDx events. You can always watch these talks online afterwards. So why should you pay to go and see a live event? But the live event is basically you get a personalized interaction with the speakers. And that's one of the remits. Whenever somebody wants to speak at a TEDx Leicester conference, they have to make themselves available the whole 2 days for the rehearsal, so they can interact with our volunteers and our sponsors. And then the next day, they have to be there for our audience. And that's something that we've always maintained. So it's that interaction, and that's where the hybrid event comes into it, where you pay because you want to go and see someone, meet them, talk with them, and, you know, maybe even network with the speaker, right? Now, are we going to charge for virtual events? We would only charge if we had to pay for filming and all the other costs. And how would we price that? You know what? We may not even charge if it's a virtual event, because as Franco mentioned earlier, we're inclusive. So we actually don't charge the standards and the rates that TEDx Bristol, London, Exeter, all the big events do. We're actually very inclusive. So we offer, we just basically just give free tickets to those who we know can't afford them. And we actually find those communities and we just give them. We don't ask for a sponsor for that. What we want to try and do is build the community to a level where if they feel they can afford it, they'll pay. If they can't afford it, I'm not forcing anyone to pay for something, because what we want to do is ultimately give good quality content. If it's something that we feel is of high content and value, and educational, then it's like paying for a training course. So then you can justify it. As Franco said, you know, it's about the quality and the content of what you're curating. Then you pay for it because there's got to be an outcome. You can't just go to an event and, you know, everyone gets webinar fatigue. I don't actually get involved with many webinars. I'm really selective. I've said no to a lot. One, I find them boring. Two, I'm just, you know, I've just lost.
But this one is brilliant, though. This one is fantastic.
And this one is engaging. And of course, it's down to the host and the facilitators and the content and the quality of the speakers. So it's about curating an event that makes it interesting and of value. So going back to that, what do you want your audience to pay? Well, actually, let them decide. Do you want to turn up to a face-to-face like Rainer's having? And, you know, if you've got people that you're going to network with face-to-face, they're worth paying for. If you don't want to and it's light touch, okay. However, there are some webinars that people have had to pay for. The Tech London Advocates, the CogX, some had to pay high value. But then they got quality introductions, quality workshops, quality content. So what am I going to do? Well, I've got to talk to my team about this. But the point is, this is how we would price it based on what's the value? How long has it taken us to build that content? Is it, you know, a value that people should pay for? Because the other thing we've got to be really careful about is not to dilute the value of our events and the content of virtual events by making everything free, and then people just can't be bothered to pay for things.
I think it's so, just to jump in quickly because Rhino hasn't jumped in, but I think CD with TED events as well, they're not-for-profit events. And so, you know, you see, okay, to produce this, because you still need, you know, some production elements, you'll need, so the volunteers come in, they're great. You've got the kind of the TED kind of format to follow and the guidelines and the branding, etc. But there's, you know, there's some time that goes in there. So that can be voluntary.
Absolutely.
But you need to deliver a good event, you need a professional input in there. And then you see what that stacks up to. Some of it can be sponsored, great. Yeah. But at the end of the day, events are not sustainable if they're not making money. And you know, volunteering eventually, you know, fades out. And so it's a different conversation between a not-for-profit event and maybe a setup like Rhino, where you are a business, or like me, and you have to make an event and you have to prove.
But we do. I mean, this is why I said
we are running a bit out of time here.
Oh, sorry, Rainer.
Can I just quickly, Rainer, you give me your answer quickly, and then I do want to get Mukta back in. So how do you make that financial decision about charging for these events?
Yeah, we don't charge our events because it's kind of, it's economic policy. We want to motivate startups from Berlin who don't really know a lot about Asia to get more active in Asia, so we don't charge it. But the calculation is quite easy. Before we had a catering for the participants. Now we have technology tools, and it's more or less the same. And it's for a hybrid event. If you have the same amount of people in the room as before, of course, it's getting more expensive because you have to add online elements, but then you reach also a much bigger audience. I think it's a question of how big is the audience of your event, whether if you reach 10,000 people, it's quite cheap online, and it's very expensive to do it offline because whether it's 5 people or 5,000 people, it's more or less the same amount of money you need for an online event. Whereas for a catering for 5,000 people, it's a difference than for 5 people. So it's a question how many people do you attend, and probably in our case, Corona specific, we will have less participants, so less catering, less people flying in from Asia. And we are paying some of the traveling costs as well. So and at the end, it might be the same price for having a kind of smaller physical event and a bigger online event, but it really depends on how many people you reach with your offline events, and that's getting very cheap per person if you reach enough people.
It's fascinating, but it is such a fascinating subject, and I'm sorry, but we haven't got much longer left because we could go on talking for ages. So I wanted to ask Mukta back quickly before we go. Here he is. Hi there.
Hi there.
We don't have to stop the conversation, though. This is the joy of uni, really, isn't it? Because tell us what we can be still doing or how the conversation's going to continue.
Yeah, there's so much great points that everybody was mentioning here that we could
so many
keep
more
going.
questions on the
so
chat.
many questions on there. Yeah, there's a lot of questions on there that we didn't get a chance to discuss, and so that's the whole point of continuing this conversation and not just stopping here and letting all these bright ideas die down. And so everybody could keep up with everything on uni, on our community side. And so throughout the rest of this month, even though it's the first day of the month, throughout the rest, we're going to continue answering those questions, doing a few Q&A sessions that we're going to be posting with each of the speakers. I'm just going to email a few questions that you guys have, and then we just post the responses that we get. And so everybody can keep up to date with any ideas and resources that we share on backstage.nuni.io. So I want to, of course, thank everybody for coming, and I want to thank all the speakers as well for giving their time to come and talk.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah,
it's not the end. So keep the conversation going, stay in the loop, come back to Backstage Uni, and all the speakers' details are there too as well. So if you want to ask people questions that you didn't get a chance to get the answer or find out a bit more from them, we can keep up the conversation. So thank you very much, everybody.
Bye-bye.
And goodbye.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
We'll
Bye.
see you again.
Lovely to catch
Rainer,
you.
we'll see you for a beer soon, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Definitely.
perfect.
Virtual one.
Okay. Take care.
you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Mukhtar. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care, guys. Let's see here.